Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. For today's video, we are going to be continuing down the list of the 50 best horror movies that you've never seen, with number 34 for us, with number 38 on the list, The Fury. The Fury came out in 1978, and it was directed by Brian De Palma and written by John Ferris. Now, as always, I am going to give you a quick synopsis of the movie, but I want to preface it with this film, it's a struggle to get through because the plot is sort of there and sort of not. It's never fully explained, so the explanation might seem a little bit hard to follow, and I will try to make it as simple as possible. But basically, the film is centered around an ex-CIA agent named Peter, whose son Robin has psychic abilities. Peter, knowing the value of having a son with these psychic abilities, is trying to keep him protected from the government because he knows the American government will take children who have psychic abilities and harness that power to use in war. So the movie opens in Israel, where Peter is hiding Robin. Now, unbeknownst to Peter, Ben Childish, who was one of his ex-CIA agent buddies, has formed a plot to stage a terrorist attack and basically kill Peter and kidnap Robin. Ben wants to use Robin's psychic abilities and knows that he won't be able to do it if Peter is still around. While the attack is happening, Peter sees that the attack's being filmed by one of the soldiers, and he starts to catch on that something is going on here. He is able to escape on a boat. The boat gets shot, it blows up, but Peter miraculously survives and hides out. Robin, though, thinks he just watched his father die. Ben then takes Robin away and takes him to an institute, and the institute is called Paragon, which is where children who have these psychic abilities go and are able to kind of control and harness their power. Robin is familiar with the institute as he had been there before, and after finding out how powerful he was, that is whenever the CIA started kind of recruiting him to work with them. That is also whenever Peter decided it was best to take Robin and run away, and of course, now that Peter is supposedly dead, Robin thinks he's dead, he goes with them back to the institute, but they take him to a top secret location where they start doing these experiments on him that are basically harnessing his power, and they are disconnecting him from like the emotional part of his brain and just using him for the psychic powers. We don't really get to any explanation on that part. But there is another girl living in Chicago named Gillian who is experiencing it's kind of like psychic episodes. She's in high school and has sort of episodes where she just harnesses the psychic ability that she doesn't realize she has, and then whoever is around her starts to bleed. She's like arguing with some girl in the cafeteria, and the girl is pregnant but hasn't told anyone, and Gillian like slams her stuff down and stands up, and she's like, "You just don't want people to know you're pregnant." And the girl freaks out, and Gillian, just being so upset and worked up, causes the girl's nose to just start gushing blood. And she does this throughout the film, where if someone like grabs her or touches her, she'll have like a psychic episode, and then like they'll start to bleed, like old scars reopen kind of stuff. But basically, Gillian goes to this institute to try to help herself. She knows it's dangerous, the amount of power that she has, and she needs to be able to control it. Now, while Gillian is at the institute, one of the women who works there is dating Peter. No idea how they're dating. Peter, as far as we know, has been in Israel for, I think, years. So I'm not sure how he met this woman, how long they've been together. We don't get that. But they're dating, and coincidentally enough, thank God Gillian comes. And Gillian, being as strong in her psychic powers as Robin is, ends up having this like connection with Robin where she can see what he's seeing. And because of this, she is seeing the torture that is happening to him at this secondary location. And the workers at the institute start to catch on that she is seeing what happened to Robin when he was there, and they know that Robin was taken away by the CIA agents. So they worry that she is going to catch on to that and then be worried that she will be also kidnapped by these CIA agents, which is not far off because they hear how strong her power is. Apparently, the Paragon Institute has a deal with like the government that if they get super strong children, they'll just like give them to the government so they can use them as weapons. Again, we don't really get any explanation on that part. But we do know that somehow the government and the Paragon are working together, and Ben, the same CIA agent that was in Israel with Robin, shows up saying that if you have a girl who is even stronger than Robin, you have to give her to us. But Hester, Peter's girlfriend, knows that Gillian can help get Peter back to Robin. Peter this entire time has been on the run, he's being hunted by the government, and still trying to find his son. He's got no idea what happened to him after the explosion in Israel conundrum. We don't see how he gets back to the States or what he does in between that time. We just see him like breaking into people's houses and stealing their cars and stuff like that, trying to find his son. But Hester tells Peter that Gillian has this connection to Robin and that Gillian can help get them to Robin, but they are on a very, very small time crunch because the government is going to take Gillian away and bring her to the same institute that Robin is at, but obviously Peter won't know where that is because like they'll take her in the middle of the night. So Hester helps Gillian escape. She dies in the process. Peter's very distraught about this. Him and Gillian do go to where Robin is. At this point, Robin is so far detached from reality. He's been groomed at this institute. He's been given everything that he wants, and he's shown horrible videos. He's even shown the clip of his father dying over and over again. And it's just to help harness those psychic abilities. But he's very close to a break, and he starts getting really paranoid. And he knows that he has this connection with Robin, but he doesn't know who she is. And he starts to get worried that they're going to kill him to replace him with Gillian. And whenever Gillian and Peter do finally find the building that Robin is in, that's when Robin starts to sense her presence there, and he just goes apeshit. Because of all the experiments they've done on him, he is very, very aggressive and moody, and it's really hard to tell just what is going to set him off. And Robin being there just was the final nail in the coffin. He'd already had a couple of other episodes throughout the movie, and this was just the final explosion. The guards do find out that Peter and Gillian are there, so while they're running around the property, inside, Robin is talking to Susan, who is one of the doctors there, who also is becoming like his sexual partner. I think, again, we don't get an explanation, that they give the people like someone to sleep with for pleasure, to think that they're like in a relationship, to groom them. Not really sure. She talks really badly about him whenever she's not with him, but then like is flirtatious, and they sleep together all the time. Again, we don't get an explanation for that. But Robin has had enough, and he starts to torture Susan with his mind, making her bleed similar to how Gillian would make people bleed. Although he takes it up a notch, because he then starts to make her rise in the air and spin and spin and spin in the air just with his brain, and like blood is flinging everywhere because she's still bleeding. She's bleeding just from everywhere. And he tortures and ends up killing Susan as Peter goes into the building to find his son. The inside of the room is just completely destroyed. It's covered in smoke and blood. It's just gross and disgusting. Peter finds Susan's dead body, and then him and Robin end up fighting. Robin doesn't even really register that it's his father that he's fighting. Robin gets thrown out the window, and Peter does run after to save him, and he does successfully catch him before he slides off the roof. But as Peter is trying to pull Robin back up to safety and kind of coach him on how to climb up his arm, Robin, still not really registering that it's his father, ends up attacking him, scratching and clawing at his face, and Peter just lets go. Robin does hit the ground and starts to slowly die, but before he does, he grabs onto Gillian, and they share this like psychic moment. Their eyes glow blue, and basically Robin is sending her a message to avenge him and what happened to him there. Peter, being so distraught after everything he's gone through and not even successfully saving his son, throws himself off the roof, falling to his death. The next morning, Ben confronts Gillian, who had ended up staying there at the institute that night. She really just had nowhere else to go, but Ben approaches her and starts manipulating her, trying to get her to connect with him and pretty much convince her to stay and let them do these experiments on her. And Gillian embraces Ben almost kind of like sensually. It's really bizarre. She's like kind of breathing at his neck and up into his face, and then she kisses his eye, and his eyes go blind and he starts bleeding from them. And then she gets up and starts using all of her psychic energy. It's the most power we've seen from her, and she causes Ben to explode. Explode, combust, boom. And that's how the movie ends. Okay, so the movie is about 2 hours long, and I'll be honest with you, this is the second time I've watched it, and I definitely liked it better the second time, mainly because it's a 2-hour movie that doesn't really do a good job explaining itself, so you're kind of confused and bored for a lot of it. Honestly, the last 40 minutes is where a lot of the really good, intense stuff happens. That's when Robin starts to go on his sort of like break and starts to really have these like psychotic episodes where he's destroying things with his mind. That's when a lot of the attacks and death happen. The beginning of the movie is a lot of storytelling and trying to set scenes. We spend a lot of time focusing on Robin and then switch very quickly to Gillian and get no background on her, but then she kind of becomes like the main character that we follow. And I think Gillian and Robin are supposed to have a lot of similarities in their like psychic abilities, but they don't communicate that very well. Generally, the consensus I was able to find is the movie doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's still a fun film to watch. Some reviews say it's like a fast-paced, fun movie. I don't think it's very fast-paced. I think it doesn't pick up until about the middle to end. But on the second watch, I do like the movie a lot better. It's definitely more of like a sci-fi-esque movie just because of all the psychological elements and the psychic abilities, and we don't see really any gory horror kind of stuff until those last about 40-ish minutes. So it's more action-y than anything else. So if those are the kind of like horror movies that you enjoy more than the slasher films, and this would probably be a good film for you. Personally, this movie is not one of my favorites. I'm not sure if I would watch it again on my own. I'd watch it if someone wanted to watch it with me, but it's not the kind of movie I think I would just choose to watch on a Friday night. But the movie's actually based on a 1976 book of the same name by John Ferris. And not surprisingly, a lot of the reviews I read said the book is better. The explanations are a lot better, the story makes a lot more sense, but apparently the characters are very different in how they act. And even like a twist at the end turns out to be that Ben is Gillian's father, and the only reason that they didn't keep that in the movie is just because they wanted to have that last scene of the explosion, the combustion of Ben, and they wanted it to start off with Gillian kissing his eye, and they thought if he announces to her that he's her father and then she like does this weird seductive move and kisses him, it would be kind of too bizarre. But Ben's last words to Gillian are, in fact, that's exactly what you need right now, a father you can depend on. And this is just sort of like a homage to the fact that in the book, Ben is actually Gillian's father, but they didn't want to do that for the movie. But Brian De Palma, the director of this movie, had just finished doing the movie Carrie the year before, so he did 2 psychic movies back to back. I'm sure you can realize which one of his movies he's more recognized for. And De Palma sort of used the Fury to do things that he wasn't able to do in Carrie. The budget for Carrie was only about $1.8 million, while the budget for the Fury was closer to $8 million. So De Palma had a lot more funding to be able to do some bigger effects that he wasn't able to do in Carrie. One of them being the pulsing vein that shows in Robin's forehead whenever he has one of his psychic episodes. That was supposed to be something done in Carrie, and they just never had the budget for it. Also, big scenes like that last explosion at the end, those were scenes that took an entire day to shoot, and they had to do multiple times. They used about 9 high-speed cameras to do that shot and basically set them around the room. And the combustion was real. Obviously, it wasn't a real person. It was a dummy that was rigged to explode, and it had blood and guts inside of it. De Palma said the first time that they did the shot, none of the guts were anywhere near the camera. He said the shot looked very boring because nothing hit the cameras, aimed towards the cameras. They only did the shot twice, and De Palma said it took a full week to clean the set to reset it for the second shot. Thankfully, after doing it the first time, they were able to see what they needed to adjust to get the guts to fly where they needed them to fly, and they were able to get the second one pretty easy without having to do a third shoot, which would have taken an additional week to get the set reset. And that end combustion scene, not only is it my favorite death of the whole movie and just a fantastic way to end a film, it was even stolen by David Cronenberg within 2 years of being released. The 1981 movie Scanners is one of David Cronenberg's bigger movies, and there is an iconic head explosion scene in that film, and if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. That head explosion was directly stolen from the combustion scene in this film. Cronenberg does not try to hide it. He loved that shot so much, he had to use it in one of his films. And the crazy thing is, the scanner scene is even more famous than the Fury movie altogether. You have a higher chance of people recognizing the Scanners movie and the Scanners scene than you would showing them the Fury movie. It's just one of those films that sort of got lost in the shuffle. It did gross about $24 million overall, so it didn't do too bad, especially for that time. It was just one of those movies that you kind of forget about it. And there's even a Rotten Tomatoes review about this movie that has the perfect quote that I think really sums up the film. And they summarize the movie as a somewhat forgettable, yet mostly watchable thriller. And I think that's a pretty accurate description. I have seen this movie before, and after reading that review and like seeing other reviews where people were like, it's the kind of movie that you just sort of like forget about afterwards, I can attest to that. Yes, it's one of those movies that you just don't think about afterwards. There isn't really any like moment or scene where it really tugs at your heartstrings, or you're like, oh my god, this is like so crazy, I'm never gonna be able to forget this. There are iconic scenes in the film. I mean, obviously we've talked about that, but it's not like the film itself is so good that you're gonna remember it. You might remember one or two scenes, but like you're not even gonna remember why they happened. But it's also shot very well. The musical score is nice. There are shots that are done well enough that you sort of forget you aren't sure what's going on in the scene that you're watching. So I'll give it credit where credit's due in that aspect. But as a story, it's really hard to follow. It's not super compelling, and it doesn't get anywhere interesting until like the very end. My favorite death in the movie is that last one with Ben exploding. Honestly, the few deaths that we see in this film are pretty good. One of the doctors, her like fingernails and like eyes, nose, ears, everything bleed, and like she just like keels over. I mean, Susan's death was pretty good, where she spins around and is tortured by Robin. But that last explosion is just so unexpected and gruesome that you can't not love it. And I will give this movie a gore-esque rating. I know that it's not super blood and gory, but there are guts that fling at the screen at the end. The last 40 minutes is really where this gore-esque rating comes from, because the like first hour and 20 minutes are just weird setup stories, psychic, I don't know what's going on. So while there isn't a ton of blood and gore, when they do use it, they use it well, and it's gross. We see scars bust open and start to bleed, eyes bleed. They're definitely conservative with the gore that they use, but they do use it well, so kudos there. But this film is hard. Brian De Palma knew it was going to be compared to Carrie, as that movie just came out the year before and was much bigger than this film, but he still wanted to do another psychic movie where he was able to do some of the things that he wasn't in Carrie. Do I think the movie deserves to be on the list? I guess I would say yes. I can definitely understand why it's on the list and appreciate it for what it is, even if it's not a movie I personally enjoy. But with that being said, I would love to hear what you guys think of this movie. You can leave a comment down below or head over to my Instagram, What a Horror. I'll be making a post about this video as well. But as always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you want to see new videos, because I put out new videos every Friday. And until next time, stay spooky.